Today is the third week of our Race and Love series, and we just wanted to focus on how our young people can make a difference and how we can learn to love more. So we were thinking we could start off touching on the message that you shared in the mashup. If some of our young people remember that, about how to cross the road. Just an absolutely profound message, and I love that this like God is clearly working through this. The verse of the day, as we were talking about today, is love your neighbour as yourself, Matthew 22:38. So what is that verse saying then? Love your neighbour as yourself. And do we need to does our view of ourselves need to change for that to happen?
Yeah, ultimately speaking, like how we treat other people is a picture and extension of how we see ourselves. And yeah, so for us to have everyone we meet as a neighbour, then ultimately speaking, we have to see ourselves as somebody that, well, everybody wants to meet, is worth meeting, and that in a sense we do expand our view of ourselves, so our heart enlarges for other people, and yeah, and when we love our neighbours as ourselves, it's like we're treating other people as our own lives depend on it. Like if we take care of ourselves because our lives depend on our care, but when we see other people in that light as well, then it makes a difference how we see them, because my care could affect their life, and so yeah, I think it does have a huge impact on how we see ourselves and how we love others, and they are very linked, and I think when we expand that view of ourselves and know that our lives are worth caring about, then we extend that to other people and that too.
And we are about to start a new material, Strength and Shine, and we learned about respect, and we will be teaching you about respect. And there was a really good quote that said, all people deserve and should receive respect, no matter how different they are to you. And as Chaz said, it's important how you see yourself, because the way you love yourself, that's how you can love others. And if you don't have that love and respect for yourself, then it's difficult to give it to others as well. So that's what we will be learning to do as well.
Yeah, that's so true. As Gabby said, learn to see how God loves us, and that it's not something for us to keep for ourselves, but His love is so big that we want to share it with others. And back on that quote from your message then, Chaz, why does love have to come with an action?
Well, it's kind of weird to think about love without an action, in the sense that, like I'm married, I have a daughter now, and if my love weren't followed by action, then there'd be no way of demonstrating or building on that. And so love without action is, it's like ineffective, like faith. Faith without action is ineffective, and love comes with an action because, and not just that's a character of God, but also that's the way we then actually build upon love. Like to build upon something, you need an action, and so when you act with love, then there's always a sense of building something greater. Like for example, like I love my wife, and so asked to marry me, and then we started living this life together, so love builds. And what God did for us is that He loved us, so He gave His Son, and then that built for us an access to be able to have free relationship, because with that love there's a sense of permanence and not a sense of not just like a feeling, because feelings can come and go, but when you love out of an action, there's not only is there a demonstration, but there's also a development of something greater. And I think love comes with an action because, that's the picture of God. God is love, and He, through His wisdom, created the world, and through His love created humankind, and then through His love He then died to pay the price for everything that divided us and Him. And so with love, from in our point of view, it's like when we really have that sense of love, there's it's almost like a dam bursting. Something has to happen when there's a sense of love. And there's that verse in 1 John 4:18 where it says, perfect love casts out fear. And so when we have that love, fear is a restrictive agent, and so when we have that perfect love, it just takes any restraint, and we don't feel judged. We don't feel like we can't act, but then we're free to move. And when we live out of that love that builds, it's like it's like words can be something, but when you build something, that there's it's almost like a stronghold. It's like evidence, and that's like when you act, it goes into history. And love, like God's love, made history. He came into the world 2,000 years ago, and it made history. And when we love our neighbour, we actually begin to make history in their life through that act of love and through that act of building. And so, like love has to come with an action.
It's so good. And it's interesting as well, you mentioned that verse, perfect love casts out all fear. Gabby and I were talking earlier about how with such a situation going on in our lives, it can be easy for us to think that we're inadequate, or we don't have the words to say, or an embarrassment of not knowing what to say, and then that fear can sort of hold us back from opening up or sharing or having a conversation like we're doing today. But I think it's so important because we need to bring unity in this time and bring action into making a difference. And that's what we're talking about today.
Since we were talking about the Good Samaritan, why do you think the Samaritan is the unlikely one to make a difference?
I think in the context which it was told, the Samaritan was the unlikely one to make a difference because the Samaritan was the unlikely one who would have been connected with by the heroes of the story. And Jesus was making a point to say that love actually transcends any cultural divides. And that's what true love is. And in the text when he's saying, he's answering the question, who is my neighbour? And then the Samaritan was the person who went over that, and then he reversed the question. He said, so which one was being a neighbour? And so the Samaritan was chosen because Jesus was making a point that whoever it is, regardless of whether you understand where they're from or not, they are your neighbour because they are cohabitants of the planet that God made, and the human race who he died for. And so with that, the Samaritan would be the most likely one because the least likely one because he would be, if this person was definitely Jewish, he would be the one that would be rejected for trying to help because this person could see his need as irrelevant compared to this person being from a different background than he was. But Jesus was making the point to say that anyone, doesn't matter where they're from, is our neighbour. And if we happen to be on the same road, we shouldn't cross the other side, but rather cross to meet the need of whatever is going on in that situation.
Could lead us to our next question then, which is about how can our young people make a difference in their spheres, physically and on social media? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, it's social media is a big one. Certainly with the online sphere is massive, and if it isn't massive now, it will be because of what we're facing just now. And how we carry ourselves and how we see ourselves in social media is of utmost importance. And in terms of how we interact, your experience with social media is linked to who we follow. And we can unfollow, or we can block certain things, or we can follow. And what happens when we follow is our experience begins to be shaped by what we follow. And to widen even more in our relationship with Jesus, when we're following Jesus, we're more likely to be shaped like him. And so we will interact with the world like he would interact with the world. So in social media, we're talking about love. And we can ask ourselves questions like, is what I'm posted out of love? Am I demonstrating something which is loving, or am I just demonstrating something that I think is cool? And there's that element which it's helpful to ask ourselves, because again, if we don't check our hearts before doing these things, then we could be taken up with the tide of social media, and just because it's current we think it's right, but when we act out of that place of love, Like, am I posting out of love? Am I saying something which builds or tears down? And in doing that, we begin to see the purpose of why we should say anything and why we should do anything. It's out of that place of love and adding value. When we follow the trends of social media, there is this element of, well, we believe it to be the truth because our experience is shaped by what we follow. But if we realize we're a follower of Jesus first and we express ourselves on social media rather than we follow social media and whether we get the chance we express love, like that's kind of like that's the antithesis of what it is to use it for its proper uses, and that wants to expand our social network rather than expand an agenda, what have you. But yeah, out of that place of love, I think we safeguard ourselves, and we also keep our message of love consistent, and so we know what to tune into and what not to in social media.
Yeah. You mentioned about the culture that we carry, and one thing I just wanted to share with our young people is that they might not be able to tackle racism by themselves, but physically and on social media we can all play a part in challenging like hate or racism when we see it, without putting themselves at risk, or reporting it if it's on social media helps to make other people see that it's not okay, and that we're here to create a culture of love and not of hate, and thinking about what Jesus would do in each scenario.
But at the same time, like, I don't want anyone to feel pressured into posting anything, like, because I know it feels like if you're not saying anything, then people might think you don't care, or but you do care. You just don't. Maybe you don't know how to express it, or so it might be difficult sometimes to know what to post, or because you don't want to say anything that could offend anyone. Because then it really has changed how people are using social media. It's more people raising awareness and sharing information that's useful. So it really has changed what people are putting out, and I think that's a good thing. It's just people need to learn, probably get used to that new way of using social media.
Yeah. The next question: how do we train our brains to ensure that we are not judging others based on the pigment of their skin?
There's other elements where we have to be aware of what's in what we're in. So there's little subcultures that we don't realise we can actually inherit and then take on. And so in terms of guarding your mind, it's training yourself to be fully aware of what you're in. And like as Ephesians 4 talks about there being not giving the enemy a foothold. And it's those little things which help give the enemy a foothold and an access into a larger area. And that can be the area of our hearts, and without knowing it we can have these prejudices which we can't define because we don't know how they got there. And so ultimately speaking, training yourself involves start as being disciplined, knowing what you're in and what's going on, knowing what reactions you have is a big one, and then being conscious to be a bridge builder. I've learned through my life to wherever you see, build a bridge, because in terms if you don't build a bridge, the opposite is you build bitterness, or you build resentment, or you build a blockade in your heart, and so you don't fully engage with a group of people. You wouldn't say you're against them, but you wouldn't exactly be for them, if you know what I mean. So yeah, training really involves that aware and disciplined approach to what it is that you want to do, and be focused on being a bridge builder. And I think if you're focused on that, then everything else begins to answer the questions for you.
So I guess going back to that then, that sort of key principle, loving God and loving people, that our verses are about, if that's, as you say, our focus and our goal is love, then it helps us in every situation to not discriminate, or to not think of self, or to not see other people as different, but see everyone as equal and all loved by God. I just wanted to say thank you both so much for just joining this discussion and for opening yourselves up to having a conversation and for us all just to hear what God is saying and wants to say to our young people. So thank you so much for joining today, and thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.